Hello and welcome back to My Classics Portal. Today we are back in Repton and this time looking at a different part of history. So previously in our St Wiston's Church video we looked at the Viking history and now we are going to the medieval times. So we are stood directly under the arch which would have been the gateway to the monastery. The monastery was founded in the 12th century and this archway would have been built around 1250.
That's right. Yeah, the abbey was founded by the Countess of Chester in the middle of the 12th century. Refounded, as it were, because obviously the original Anglo-Saxon community was destroyed by the Viking invasion in 874.
So, what is the significance of this building?
Well, this building is the only bit, apart from the archway and one or two bits of ruins, it's the only bit of the old abbey that we have remaining.
Wow.
Yeah, the school, it's part of the school now, but we'll come back to that later, the significance of it for the school. But the school referred to it as the old priory. Actually, it was the guest house for the abbey, where guests would come and stop. Yeah.
Behind me are the remaining pillars of the old Abbey Church. Now, the Abbey Church would have come into disuse during the dissolution and likely was knocked down as the school expanded.
So behind me is what would have been the wall of the refectory in the abbey, which is, of course, is the place where the monks would come to eat. Very important place. So we've got the wall of the refectory there, and then just down here we've got the remains of an undercroft chamber, which presumably would have been used to keep food cool down there. And you can just see some of the vaulting that came off the roof of that chamber.
So what is this building behind us? I notice it's a lot different to the buildings either side.
Well spotted, yes, absolutely. I think this is Repton's second best kept secret after the crypt under the church. Yeah, this is called Prior Overton's Tower. Okay, what can you tell me about priors and abbots in the Middle Ages, or the late Middle Ages particularly?
I presume they were very wealthy.
They were indeed, yeah. I mean, they were very often younger sons of the nobility who got the plum jobs, because an abbey like Repton would have acres and acres of land attached to it, so massive income. Yeah, so they weren't poor people at all, particularly the abbots. But Prior Overton clearly didn't fancy having to live with the rest of the community. Yeah, that was beneath him.
Yep.
So he built himself a little tower, or rather a big tower actually. This was in the middle of the 15th century. Built himself a tower so he could be all on his own here and live in grandeur. Yeah, and didn't have to associate with the rest of the monastery. So when the monasteries were dissolved in the 16th century by Thomas Cromwell at Henry VIII's behest, all the lands belonging to the abbeys reverted to the crown. It wasn't just the land that was significant here, but the monasteries also provided a service to the local community. They provided education, particularly for the sons of the local gentry, but also they provided social care for the poor of the local community, providing bread and alms for them. So that disappeared with the dissolution of the monasteries, which is why in the 16th century we find an awful lot of the foundation of schools, grammar schools, and also almshouse foundations as well, which brings us neatly to Sir John Port. Sir John Port was the lord of the manor in a village about 4 or 5 miles from here called Etwall, which happens to be where I live. Sir John Port left in his will that he wanted to provide for the foundation of almshouses in the village of Etwall and also a grammar school here at Repton. The school was founded in 1557 and it originally the original building that was acquired by John Port was the building that we referred to earlier, that was the old guest house. This became the original school. It was owned by the Thacker family, who lived in the hall just behind these gates here. Okay, and they sold this bit of their land, including the building, to John Port for use as a school. There was a bit of a disagreement later on between the Thacker family and the school, because the boys used to play out here and it blocked the entrance into the school, so they put these fine gates up to be a demarcation between the school and the hall. They're referred to by the school traditionally as the Pillars of Hercules. Later, of course, the school acquired the hall and it became the house for the headmaster.
So we've got the old Priory building over there to the right.
Which was the first bit of the school.
Yep. And then we have this building behind us. What is the history of Pearse School?
Well, this dates back to the middle of the 19th century.
Yep.
Okay. It's called Pearse School, named after the Reverend Dr. Stuart Adolphus Pearse, which is a very grand name, isn't it?
Yeah, very long.
But by this stage, apparently, Repton School had dwindled and they only had about 49 pupils, mostly from the local area. But there was a vision and a drive at that time, led originally by a guy called Thomas Arnold, who's very famous as the headmaster of Rugby School, to actually create and widen the scope of these schools to become what we know as now as public schools. In other words, schools for the education of those who would be future leaders of the country. Mm-hmm. And so Adolphus Pearse was actually a colleague at Rugby with Thomas Arnold, the headmaster, saw what had done there, and he tried to do something very similar here at Repton to expand the school. I mean, this was the first bit of new building that he put in. Also, the chapel was built around this time, or started around this time as well. What the vision was something that's often referred to as, by later scholars, as muscular Christianity. In other words, that the boys who are going to be future leaders should be not only educated in the Christian faith, but also have a broader understanding of the original grammar schools were set up pretty well just to learn Latin grammar.
Yeah.
And maybe a bit of mathematics as well, but offer a broader curriculum, sciences, history, other aspects of the curriculum. But also, one of the most noticeable things behind this drive in the middle of the 19th century was the introduction of team sports. Yeah? Okay. Schools had playing fields for the first time. Nobody at that time, team sports had been something that the working class had done at Shrovetide and things like that, you know. Yeah. But the idea of team sports, of ball sports, you know, whether it's cricket or football, could actually be good for the development of young men's character, in that it meant that they had to come together and play sport together, and it was regarded as good for them. So that's what's often referred to as muscular Christianity. But it was very much part of Dr. Adolphus Pearse's vision for the school here, and it's reflected in the buildings that are here still.
Yeah, wow. And that's a brief snapshot of the history at Repton School. Thanks to the school for letting us come onto the site and film, and if you do want to visit some of these things, then do get in touch with the school first. And as always, make sure to follow and subscribe if you want to see us visit other locations in the country.